Do you believe that England is a pleasant glade, each blade of grass God made, each cottage stayed, each tree a place of good shade? Or are you afraid that someone will always piss on your parade? That was in an English country garden centre. Just write it, finish it, and then go back and rewrite it, finish it, rewrite it, and really hone it down and be brave at throwing things out. I started writing books when I was about 20, 21, and most of them have been absolute crap. And the first one, I wrote it, and if I'd stuck at it, I could have turned it into a relatively good book, but I didn't. I moved on to the next one. And I think that's always been the curse of John Bird, moving on to the next one. In the meanwhile, you do pick up enormous skills if you just keep writing and writing and writing. But I think going back, revising, write a book and at 100,000 words and try and reduce it down to about 80, cut out a lot of stuff, clean it up, don't be too show rather than tell. I think it's really important that you try and get the dialogue going, unless of course it's a dialogue-free book, and some of those work as well. But I think you've got to be tough with yourself. I've never been as tough with myself as I would have liked. So consequently, I wrote an autobiography for Penguin about 10 years ago, and I read it, and if I was doing it again, I would probably cut it in half, which would reduce it down to about 60,000 words. I started writing very late. I was 15, 16 when I started to read and write properly. And then once I'd started to read and write, I've never stopped. I now write probably more than I read, which is probably not a good thing. I write thousands of words a day sometimes. I've even written a 80,000 word book in 5.5 days, 6 days. Let's not exaggerate. So I can write tons of the stuff. But I keep writing and I keep coming up with ideas. Everything I've written is limited because once you've finished it, you think, oh yeah, I could have done better. So life is one long rewrite in a sense. So the film will probably be semi-fictional about somebody who was a self-defeated person who was doing a lot of harm to himself, and who kind of got out of it in the end. It's actually quite a typical story. It's probably one of the major stories of the Western tradition, which is, the prodigal son, the person who overcomes titanic problems and then makes it in the end. So it's a bit of a cliche, but it's a cliche that works again and again and again. And it's surprising the amount of stories there are about the insurmountable being surmounted. And people love it. It's like somebody said to me last night, isn't poverty terrible? At an event I spoke at, and I said, no, there's nothing wrong with poverty. There's absolutely nothing wrong with poverty, and as long as you can get out of it. Because if you can get out of it, you can write books about it, you can sit and make films about it, you can tell stories about it, you can write stories about it. And actually the people who don't have that have a much tougher job in writing. But I'm of the opinion that I would rather end poverty and struggle with what to write next, because I'd rather people didn't go through poverty. But poverty's all right if you can get out of it, but if you're stopped from getting out of it, as a lot of people are who end up on social security, then it's a criminal waste of your skills and abilities and even your potential genius. I'm just finishing off a book about the First World War, which is called The Long Shadow of the First World War, which is a series of about 9 letters imaginary posthumous letters sent to Kaiser Wilhelm II about the First World War, and it raises some interesting opinions that Germany was not the cause of the First World War, and that we've never quite got over the First World War, and because of that, we still live in the shadow of the war.